Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor, link right here in the description. Make sure you click through. This is the way to avoid the $1 upcharge from Apple. You get access to 11 different channels right now on Off the Floor. This is the best place to talk Heat. Again, click the link, click it through, pay the $2.99 a month. And again, you won't regret it. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. This episode is especially sponsored by Underdog. Join more than 5 million happy players and $2 billion won. Give it a shot. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. You get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, you can play the up-downs on any player that you like there, anyone you find. We're going to talk about 3 Heat players in this episode, Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, and Jimmy Butler. So check out what they have to offer there on Underdog. You can also check out everything that else is on the app. I've done that. Found lots of other things that you can do there. Use the code again, 5, $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Here's the thing. You must be at least 18 or 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, 21 or over in Massachusetts or Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Again, that's 1-800-GAMBLER, or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Terms apply. Check it out. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick. And at 5 Reasons Sports, I got Alex Toledo. You can find him at Tropical Blanket. Make sure you check out the recent episode that I did with Brady Hawk. You can find at Brady Hawk 305. We went through the current starting lineup. We'll see if it's the one that Eric Spoelstra goes with on Sunday, and we'll see if it's permanent. Terry Rozier appears to be close to getting back to action, but will he return as a starter? That's one of the things that we got into. All right, let's check out something that came out on ESPN. 5-day break, we're always looking for pod fodder. So let's go through this, and I really think there are 2 things at play here, and I want us to kind of get into both here in the short amount of time that we've got. So NBA Central put this up, the ESPN's best big threes in the NBA, okay? I'm just going to give you some highlights. We're not going to go through every single player. They had Tatum, Brown, and White, number 1. Interesting where Derek White has come to at this point, that he's their number 3 guy. I don't think that would have been considered the case a year or 2 ago. And others can argue it is Porzingis or it is Holiday. The point is they've got a lot of options. They had Oklahoma City second, SGA, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. Jokic, Murray, and Aaron Gordon, number 3. Luka, Kyrie, and Derek Lively, number 4 for Dallas. Giannis, Dame, and Brooke, number 5. I don't know. MB, PG, and Maxey. That group has played, 5 minutes together, something along those lines. And of course, that team is 2-12.
0
runs, right? 0 is it 0? No, I'm sorry.
I don't think they played together at all. At least not in the regular season.
I thought they started together the other day. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't even keep it straight over there. People think that Embiid is the leak of the report that he's so upset about. That's how crazy things are in Philadelphia. Number 7, the Knicks, Brunson, Anunoby, and Cat. 8, Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley. I think they should be a little higher considering the fact they've lost 1 game this year. Number 9, Memphis, John Morant, Desmond Bane, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. Number 10, Ant, McDaniels, and Gobert. So no Randall. Obviously, Towns isn't there anymore in Minnesota. Number 11, LeBron, AD, and Reeves. Some would say now it should be actually Dalton Connect at this point as the 3rd guy. Number 12, Steph, Draymond, and Pods. Number 13, Booker, KD, and Beal. Who thought they would be there? And anyway, if you go further down the list, you get to a trio that, whether or not they all contributed at the same time, Alex, over the past 5 years going into the season, they've made 3 conference finals and 2 NBA finals. and ESPN has Butler, Adebayo, and Herro 20th. Your initial reaction to that, and then because I don't want this to just be a Heat outrage pod, because there are arguments to be made on the other side of this. Do you think 20 is appropriate for where they are right now?
I guess, but I did think it was a little bit disrespectful in a way, because I feel like they're kind of getting ahead of themselves with some of the other ones, and I feel like the Heat are kind of the ones that always get kind of thrown out the window. And I do feel like what you said, right? I know Heat fans like roll their eyes when we mention, like when we dare to mention the results of their successful run because it doesn't apply to this season. I get it. I get it. Like we could talk about how this is a completely different team. I get it. It is. It's a different team with different dynamics, and it's not, all the same. But the results are the results, right? Like I think if there was other trios on this list had those results over the past few years, I think they would be much higher. Frankly, I think it kind of gets looked over. Although Tyler was only a part of one of those, and I think that's kind of where it, that's where you can kind of go back and forth a little bit. Is that Tyler was only a part of that bubble finals run when he was a rookie, and then ever since he's kind of really turned, I think just come into his own as an NBA player. They haven't made those runs, and I think it's obviously, related to the injuries and all that. But it's true. It's just that they made long playoff runs without him, and so I get like when you put them all together like that, ranking them a little bit lower than some of the other ones. But it just feels like it's such a weird exercise. Like some of these they're trying to find a third, even though it's more like a duo. You have like the Bucks in 5th, and it's like I get it if this was like a list that came out let's even before this season, like I would get it. But I don't know how you can just ignore the way that they like didn't play together that well last season, their start to this season. And by the way, I was wrong. You were right. I looked it up. They have played together 5 minutes, the Sixers guys. I thought it was I didn't even realize that they had. I thought it was still at 0. But that's another one. It's like they haven't even played together yet. Now they're being ranked one of the best trios. And then meanwhile, they have like the worst record in the league. It's just a weird exercise. But you know what? Shout out ESPN, because during this 5-day break, like you said, we do need the content. And
yes,
classic podcast content for us when we need stuff is lists that ESPN do that we can then complain about. So thank you, ESPN, for being so consistent with that. But yeah, I just think it's kind of unfortunate for the Heat with the results they've had that like they're basically only ranked ahead of the worst teams in the league when it comes to these trios. Like if you start looking at all the teams, all the trios behind the Heat, it's all the worst teams.
Well, and there are two ways to look at this, and we're going to look at the other side of it in a second. Did Bontemps do this list, by the way? I'm trying to figure out who did it. I wasn't able to locate it, so I don't want to. Again, I'm friendly with all the guys on the Hoop Collective, and I have a feeling this was a Hoop Collective exercise, which I guess would be Windhorst, Bontemps, and McMahon. Tim is not a Heat hater, by the way. He's not a big Herro fan. I know that. We've had many conversations about the Heat, but here's what I will say about it, though. That's a little odd before we get into the numbers that may actually speak to the argument against the Heat trio, is that what are we counting here? So it's like you're giving some players or some trios, for past success, you're giving them credit for past success, even if it wasn't team success. So you're basically saying like Giannis, Dame, and Brook. Well, yeah, conceivably that should be a really good trio, even though Giannis and Dame haven't accomplished anything together, but Giannis and Brook did. So you're giving them credit for that. But again, they haven't looked good this year. Having Phoenix so low, it seems like they are taking away from, but they've looked better this season, the three of them. I don't know how you have a trio with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in it that's not in the top 10. Okay, so to me, the most egregious one here is not the Heat one. And I understand Phoenix was a disappointment last year, but they've looked better starts this season. But again, some of these are just like, they're just crazy projections. And the results are there. And here's the part about it. The weakest member of this trio was Tyler, right? Who is having a career season. So unless we're arguing that Bam and Jimmy can't play anymore, okay, and some may argue that, certainly they haven't gotten off to the best starts together, and Jimmy missed time, and Bam has been disappointing with the exception of probably 3 games, although defensively his metrics are better than, if you look at the on-off metrics, they're still excellent, but offensively he's been disappointing compared to what people expected. You'd have to really argue with Tyler elevating that Bam and Jimmy like suck now. Like that to me, that's the only way you could put them 20th, because the weak link in that trio was Tyler. And now if you look at him compared to the other third options among the trios, he looks better than a lot of them. He's played at a higher level than a lot of them. So to me, it's a hard case to make. But let me go to the flip side of this, Alex, because the case that we make all the time is the three of them struggle to play together. Okay. So let me give you this. All right. So far this season, the Heat trio of Butler, Adebayo, and Herro has played 9 games, 168 minutes. It's not the most used trio because Jimmy was missed time, right? But still, 168 minutes is not a tiny, tiny sample size. I mean, it's small, but it's not tiny. They're averaging over almost 20 minutes a game together when they all actually play, which basically means when Jimmy plays. Offensive rating 110.7, which is not great. It's okay. Defensive rating 122, which is bad. So their net is like a minus 11 or 12 right now. Can we give the ESPN any benefit of the doubt here that maybe they're making the same argument that the trio doesn't fit in the same way that we've made that argument on occasion?
Yeah, but I'm a little bit like cynical about it because it's like I don't think they're that deep in the weeds with like Heat analysis. And we know this, like a lot of these guys are not watching Heat basketball like that. So I'm a little bit like skeptical that that's the reason that they're doing it, because of like the quote unquote fit. I don't know if that's the reason, but you like what you said is 100% true. Like those are the numbers when you look at them all together. -10 net rating. And what stands out in those numbers, obviously it's still early in the season. It's still kind of small sample size, but what stands out in those numbers is that with the three of them on, the Heat are shooting 48% from 2. That's insane. And then on the other side, opponents are shooting 60% from 2. So I think there's a little bit of weird math going on. It's like why is their defense, their paint defense so bad in those minutes, and why are the Heat shooting 48% from 2 in those minutes? So those are the two things that stood out to me there. But you know me, like I've always been one to kind of downplay this a little bit, just because I do think like it's not a perfect fit or anything like that, right? The three of them, I think it has more to do with Jimmy and Bam than it does with Tyler, especially with like this year's Tyler, where he's kind of been the best player on the team for most of the season. So I'm skeptical that that's the reason why like Tyler's fit with the rest of them, when I think we can all see that even though I still think Jimmy and Bam fit together well, and they've gone through long playoff runs, playing a whole lot of minutes together, though that's to me like when you watch it just straight up eye test, Jimmy and Bam are the ones that like are kind of an awkward fit. Now I would have kind of got it in the past if you want to say Tyler's an awkward fit with them because maybe he needs the ball a little bit too much. I don't really agree with that though. At least, especially not during the regular season. Like I feel like Jimmy and Bam, with the way they sometimes, as far as like the places that they operate on the floor, the way that sometimes Jimmy will cut when when somebody else is already trying to work in the paint. I think there's some awkwardness there. Ultimately, it's worked, but I don't know, man. Like I think, for example, having like Wemby, Vassell, and Steph Castle, right?
Yeah.
As a big three. Like I just think, like, what are we doing here?
What number did they have them, Alex?
Oh, I'm sorry. They were like 17 or 16, I want to say.
Okay. So we're taking a big three. Okay, let's just go through it. Okay, you've got Wemby, who we know what he may become. He's not there yet. You've got Vassell, who is Vassell better than Tyler at this point?
No.
Okay.
No.
And so we're now saying that Castle is better than Jimmy at this stage? Like, okay, so again, what are we doing? Now, there's a point I want to get to on the other side of the break that you made regarding Tyler and how this should be working. And then I want to touch on some Jimmy defensive numbers with you.
They put, like, I'm looking at it right now. They put Şengün, Reed Shepherd, and Amen Thompson a few spots of the. What is this exercise? This is such a weird exercise. Like, this must be pure, like, projection, like, oh, for the next couple of years. It's the only thing that makes any sense to me. Like, Reed
projection
Shepherd
for what? For what, 2028? I mean, projection. Yeah, like, I mean, what are we talking? I mean, by the time that most of these.
Why isn't Van Vliet in their big three? Why isn't like Tari Eason in their big three? Like one of their better players. Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd are already in their big three. This is just like young cores. I feel like maybe this is like the ranking the cores going forward. This is why like I'm confused as to what this exercise is all about.
Well, then, Alex, it should be like Bam, Tyler, Hawkins. If you're going to do that, like that is, I mean, they've done that exercise before. That's why this feels like such a strange one. And I don't want to take it too seriously, but I also don't want to. I don't want to make this again an outrage episode, because there are issues with the Heat's quote unquote big three, even with Tyler playing better. So I want to get to that on the other side of the break. Before we do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, U-Break Wheel Fix. You can find them in North Miami. Again, the U at the start, letter U at the start, ubreakwheelfix.com. This is where you can get not only your wheels fixed, and they'll give you loaner wheels if you need them, but also they can get them looking really nice. Okay, they can do the powder coating, all the different kinds of colors, all the team colors if you like that as well. If you mention us, 5 Reasons, 5 on the Floor, whatever, to Mark Dela Cruz and his team down there, they'll give you a 5.5% discount off your entire order. So check it out, ubreakwheelfix.com, based in North Miami, one of our first sponsors, one of our favorite sponsors. They do a great job down there. They will take good care of you, and they're just really good people. So check it out, ubreakwheelfix.com. All right, so let me ask you this question, then I want to get into some of Jimmy's defensive numbers before we close. What you said about Tyler, we've said about Tyler for a while. That Tyler, in a way, if he changed his game, could kind of unlock the Bam Jimmy stuff in the way that Duncan does in some of those lineups. Why is this just too small a sample size? Why is that not happening in their minutes together? Like, why? Like the defensive rating 122. I mean, Bam and Jimmy are in that. It shouldn't be that bad. And then the 110, like that's not world beating any either. That would be like 20th, 21st in the league if you were projecting that over. So Tyler's doing everything he's been asked to do.
Yeah.
Why are the numbers with the three of them not better?
I wish I could give you a straight answer, but I don't know. I think Tyler's done everything that's been asked of him. It's hard to complain about anything he's been doing, obviously, other than, like the concerns with the defense are always going to be there, even though like we've seen the marginal improvements. He's still a guy who's going to get hunted when it matters, like down the stretch of a close game. That's going to be the guy who gets hunted along with some of their other guys like Terry or Duncan. It's going to be the case, even with his marginal improvement. So I'm not trying to take that away from him. Other than that, like I said, he's done everything you'd want him to. I think it comes down to the performances of Jimmy and Bam. And I wouldn't have said this like in other seasons, but Jimmy has been inconsistent, has had like a couple of big games. The defense has been like okay for his standards, right? Bam, we know about his underwhelming start to the season and just kind of how all over the place he's been. I think it has more to do with them. I think they're the ones that haven't been, living up to the standards that they have kind of made for themselves. Whereas Tyler has I think just come out and proven a lot of people wrong. And I mean, not wrong, right? Because I think, like I said before, the defense stuff is still there. Like however you feel about him, I think he has outperformed expectations this season. But funny enough that you mentioned Duncan in there, right? Mm-hmm. Since we're doing small sample size theater, I thought I might as well throw this in because this is tiny sample size theater. What I'm about to mention is that in the 19 minutes with Bam, Jimmy, Tyler, and Duncan together, plus 27 net rating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Again, just 19 minutes, whereas Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler all together is 168. But it's funny because like the numbers that you're citing, if you filter it to Bam, Tyler, Jimmy, and you specifically filter it to without Duncan, they're even worse. Like it's like a negative 15 net rating. So it's like Duncan is kind of bringing that up a little bit. But I wonder if that points to the dynamic with Terry in that lineup.
Yeah.
And I think that has some to do with what's going on here. I think having Terry in that starting lineup and him playing so often with those other guys just changes the dynamics of like how they all play together. And we knew this was going to happen heading into the season, but it's like you thought Terry would be a somewhat efficient version of himself, even if he's not averaging like 20 a game or whatever. He's been nowhere near that. He's been awful. And, me and you guys who were for this trade and thought it was a reasonable trade. I think both of us, were pretty encouraged by what he showed last season in the time he was here. Has gone completely the other way this season, as we talked about so many times already on this pod. And it's hard because I don't want to just do like blame game and just point the finger at Terry the entire time. But like, it's just a huge part. Like it's a high usage player who is having trouble, I think, figuring out his role and has been very, very, very inefficient, right, on the offensive side. And that's something you just cannot.
But Alex, here's my question, because Well, and here's the thing, and I want to go to some of Jimmy's defensive numbers here before we close, but I just wonder. He's come out and said he had a foot injury. Okay, I think he'll play better if that heals. He said he was perfectly healthy coming into the season, by the way. So I'm not saying he's lying. He's not, but he obviously downplayed whatever it is that was bothering him. But I don't think it changes the basic dynamic. The basic dynamic is I just don't think he fits with the other three playing heavy minutes. And I just think Duncan does. And we just come back to the same thing, which Brady and I talked about on the pod, that there's a comfort level with Duncan out there. And the question for Duncan was always, how does it work with him and Tyler playing together defensively? But Haywood seems to cover that stuff up. I want to give you some numbers here real quick, and I just want to get your thoughts on it because I know we're going to say small sample size theater, okay? But I crunched the numbers. Now, we mentioned Adebayo. This is three-man trios, and again, I know three-man, you can't account for the other two, rotating in other players. Sometimes there's blowouts that skew everything at this point, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to give you defensive rating. Forget offensive rating, okay? Okay. Adebayo, Butler, Herro. 168 minutes, 122. That's awful, okay? Adebayo, Highsmith, Herro. 10 games, 184 minutes. So we're talking about roughly the same number of minutes, a little bit more, actually, than Jimmy in there. Substitute Highsmith in for Jimmy. Offensive rating stays the same. Defensive rating drops from 122 to 106.1.
My goodness.
Just to show you that this isn't a one-off, okay? Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to go Butler with Rozier and Herro. 123.1 defensive rating. Now let me sub in Haywood, okay? Again, these are all over at least 80 minutes. I didn't take anything under 80 minutes, okay? Sub in Haywood for Jimmy with Rozier and Herro. 111.8. So another 12-point drop in defensive rating. In other words, 12 percentage points better with Haywood in for Jimmy, which is it's 16 percentage points better with Haywood in. Now, we don't know Jimmy's not in there. I guess that's a fair thing because there could be some crossover with Haywood. We see that now that they're starting together. But I'm saying that's a huge difference. Now, let me go to this one. Butler with Rozier and Adebayo, 121.7. You put Jimmy in with any of these combinations, the defensive rating is terrible.
I mean,
why? Is it just so small? Because there's a clear difference right now.
I think it really proves the stuff that we've been seeing over the past couple of seasons is that Jimmy has not been the same level of defender. And like, it's one thing to be like, okay, he's not going to take on the best player every night. He's not really been that guy for a while. Not that he can't do it. We know that he can do it when it matters, but that's not really his job on a night-to-night basis for the Heat, to take on the best player. He does it sometimes. Haywood, on the other hand, is playing the best defense of his career, right? And, he's a high-level defender. I've said multiple times, I think if there was a couple more all-defense teams, he is like that level of defender, right? He would be right there. So I just think it's a little bit of confirmation bias for us here, right? Because like on the offensive side, you're talking about, yeah, Duncan just fits a lot better with these guys. On the defensive side, it's like, yeah, Haywood probably should be playing more. He's one of their best defenders outside of Bam. Like I just think it's hard to not sound like confirmation bias because these are things that we already kind of thought. But so far, again, early on in the season, things can change. But so far, those two things have been proven true. Again, like you mentioned before, I agree. I think Terry can play better, and it's also kind of hard to not play better with the start he's had. I think he can play better, and he can find his way a little bit. If they want to keep him as a starter when he comes back, I don't know if that's the move. Either way, I just don't think it's the best usage of like their mix of guys. Just playing the four of them together as much as possible. And this is stuff we talked about over the summer, like for so long. It's like finding the right mix of lineups, finding lineups that make sense for Terry, finding lineups like the Jimmy and Love lineups. And you're seeing more Duncan and Bam over the past few games, and that's a positive for sure. For the team, for Duncan and Bam, I think there's still a little bit of lineup tinkering that they got to do. And I know you guys got into it on the last spot, but it's a pretty easy way now with Terry out for them to kind of incorporate him. Maybe see how he looks coming off the bench. And again, don't know that's going to solve everything, but I just think the mix that they've had so far has not worked out. There's some upside, but I don't think there's like enough where you're like, okay, we got to keep this together. I just don't believe it. Like, I think you traded a first round pick and $30 million expiring contract for Terry. You need better production and better efficiency out of him. I don't know if you're going to get, the requisite amount of production if you keep him as a starter there with his role just kind of up in the air. But yeah, like I just think Jimmy needs to be better. I think that Jimmy, like, kind of, it's one thing for him to take offense, like the offensive plays off and be like, okay, he's not this offensive superstar anymore. But like for him to also like decline defensively is really tough for the Heat. And I think you've noticed that. And like, you know, just watching them play, the defense is not always at the level it should be. Like you've had some nights this season where it's like, oh yeah, they got 15 steals, they forced a ton of turnovers and they won. And then you got other nights where it's like, okay, they didn't really.
Well, I don't know how Alex. I don't know how they're 11th in defensive rating. I'm surprised it's that high. It's like Spo always finds this level.
They were 19 before the Sixers game.
Right. That's probably how. And so, right, because the Sixers were awful against them and they did a good job against them. But it seems to me like the starting lineup is a way, to get Bam more comfortable by having Duncan in there. But it's also, okay, we're going to play Haywood to protect Jimmy. I feel like so that Jimmy doesn't have to guard some of those guys. And it feels like it's a necessity at this point. Like, to me, Haywood Highsmith on this team is a 25-minute plus player. And I know that for some Heat fans, though, that's not good because the upside there is limited. But he is an absolute necessity on this team right now. Until Jaquez, who we hear is coming back on Sunday, gets to a certain level, and I don't know that he'll ever be the defender close to what Haywood is, they need Haywood on the floor. They don't have enough good individual defenders. And so you look at Haywood's numbers, and yes, some of it is Jimmy hasn't been good defensively, some is Haywood is that good. Like they literally cannot take him off the floor. And I also don't think they can go, and we talked about it in the offseason. We said this is going to be like a 10 to 20 game experiment with this starting backcourt. We're here. Experiment didn't work. Use Terry off the bench. Let him get his legs back. Let's see if he plays his way back in the form where he can be a little freer. But again, they're going to need to start Haywood going forward. I just don't think they have any choice. But anyway, we'll have more podcasts going into the weekend. Dallas coming in here Sunday. We do not know if Luka is going to play at this stage, although it doesn't look good for him. So Miami has a soft slate of games coming up, Alex. They should be able to make some hay here. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you here, but I felt like I had to throw this in. Again, tiny sample size theater. They're a plus 28 net rating with Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, and Duncan without Terry on the floor. So, again, only 19 minutes, but 87 defensive rating with Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, and Duncan on the floor, no Terry. And, again, this has nothing to do with Haywood. So, you don't have your defensive
my guess is Haywood was in there for some of that. And some of that is the Philadelphia game.
No, so for sure. Absolutely. This is all tiny sample size, but it's just funny to see that, like, you know, this Terry thing, man. Like, it's nice when the eye test and the numbers are kind of going hand in hand, so there's no confusion. Not to blame it all on him, but he is the obvious one standing out where it's like, okay, you got to do something about that. It's not all on him, but a lot of it is on him. He's just not giving you the play that you've needed. It's going to be interesting to see how, you know, what they do on Sunday with Dallas, though, because that's one where they always lose and one where Jimmy always struggles, it feels like.
Yeah, well, he does. Dallas and Denver are like his kryptonite. But getting back to the list here, first thing, I think it's disrespectful to have the Heat trio at the 20th. But they need to find the right two players that fit around them to unlock it. And we're at year 6 of this, and it still doesn't seem like that's been found. Again, Duncan seems to be one of them. We'll see if Haywood is the 5th. All right, thanks for joining. Check out Underdog Fantasy. Use the code 5. You break, we'll fix.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.